Hello from the brutal capitalist dictatorship of Kuala Lumpur. Hope you're having an amazing day. Today, Comrade Rice and I are going to talk to you people about liberal wreckers. People who seem to be allergic to class analysis, who try their very best to create divisions among the working class of different communities and different races and religions, rather than trying to foster working class unity. So, without further ado, let us begin. Allow me to show you guys a couple of interesting snapshots that I took on Twitter. Well, not quite snapshots, but rather, I met some rather interesting fellows on Twitter. Well, there's a fellow named Dizzy R. Comrade Rice, do you see his do you see this fellow's comment? Like on the four Harvard students. Yes, okay. Four Malaysians admitted to Harvard class of 2028. Now, okay, here's the thing. I have no doubt that these people worked hard. These four students worked very hard, okay? But if you're still filleting Western universities and you're still, how do I say, you're still fawning over Western educational institutions as the greatest educational institutions in the world, I'm sorry, but I'm afraid you're mentally colonized if that's the case, right? There's nothing that says that Western education is superior to Eastern or African education. Don't you think so, Comrade Rice?
Oh, I agree 100% because when these people are putting them way up on the pedestal, I mean Western education on the pedestal, and they seem to have this idea that unless you go and study in a Western institution, it's not real education. And it seems to me that um, these people who put this up on a pedestal are not very intelligent themselves because, you know, when I grew up, because I'm from the West, I grew up in the West, we obviously have Western education. We never read or study Eastern philosophy or Eastern writers or, political figures or anything like that. And when you start to read them, you start to realize that, yeah, there's no way that the Western is the one and only way and only factor, indicator that, someone can make it and succeed or to be seen as educated because, it's just not something I can agree with.
Mm.
And again, I have to bring this fact up. People have this what's the word I'm looking for? They have this
This
not arrogant.
fantasy, or shall we say this halcyon image of the West, a very
Yeah,
sugar-coated image of the West. Is that what you want to say?
no, what's the word? Chauvinistic. That's the one I'm looking for. Chauvinistic, right? So for example, um, let's say again, I want to learn about the East. I want to read about Eastern writers or some historical events or a historical place like the ones you showed in your one video, that one in Malaysia.
Lembah Bujang.
Yeah, right.
Hey, you're coming
So,
there next time you come to Malaysia. I'm taking you there, yeah?
yeah, yeah, yeah. But the thing is, if I want to learn about those places or these people, the smartest, well, in my opinion, maybe some people won't agree, if you have the means to, it would be better if you go to those places and learn and study from the East. If I want to learn about the East, I would go to the East, or if I don't have the means to travel there, I would learn about the East by Eastern writers or Eastern education. If I want to learn about the West, then I would go to a Western institution to learn about Western culture and values. Yet somehow it seems that the only way people these liberals, I should say, will respect or understand that you're educated about the East, for example, is you have to learn from the West.
Hmm.
So just imagine, let's say there was a wolf and a sheep, right? If I want to learn about sheeps, wouldn't it make sense to ask the sheep and not the wolf? But the
Ah.
wolf, the liberals, or the self-hating sheeps, or the liberal sheeps, are saying, no, you should only learn about sheeps if you learn it from the wolf.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Exactly. And that's why, we have exactly the epitome of this mentally colonized liberal, like we see here, Dizzy R, who is basically treating their entrance into Harvard as the greatest thing ever since the birth of Jesus Christ or Prophet Muhammad. This Dizzy R, congratulations! Make us minorities proud. We focus on hard work and dedication, not non-issues such as socks and shoes design. This is the outcome. So I said, this is such an arrogant take. So four outstanding students of ours happen to get into Harvard University. Four of them happen to be of ethnic minority background. It just so happens that there's three Chinese and one Indian, right? But there are no Malays in this cohort, so this guy's delighted. Then I asked, what has the average Malay working class person done to you exactly? Now, I don't really have time to compile all the tweets, but basically he said, no, I wasn't talking about the average Malay. He said, unless you want to refer to the people who firebomb that supermarket as the average Malay. That's what he said in response. So what do you have to say in response? He said that he wasn't talking about the average Malay. He was just congratulating minorities for beating the odds.
Well, it makes me wonder then, why did he even bring up about the socks and shoes thing or the bomb thing in the
Exactly.
first place? Why couldn't it just be congratulations, make us minority proud, and then that's it?
Yeah. Why
When you're
not? Why?
adding all, when you're adding all that extra stuff, it sounds like you're resenting someone else. You're saying it out of resentment to
It's like
someone else.
he's trying to dog whistle. Sorry.
Imagine if I break up with an ex,
Mm.
right? I break up with my ex-girlfriend or something, and then I have four guy friends, and they got married to Filipino wives, and the wives, I don't know, cook, clean, whatever. And I'll say, "Oh, congratulations, make us men proud. We focus on not cheating and this and blah 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 blah." You would think that I have some kind of resentment about my ex, right? I couldn't just be, "Oh, congratulations to the four guys that got married."
Mm.
And by adding all this extra information and detail, there's just more to it than just he's congratulating them. So I don't know what that's about.
Well, this Malaysian Indian chap got ratioed on his own tweet, so a lot of people disagreed with him. This is what he has to say. Education is very much about race in this country, you ignorant, dumb fuck idealist. When the cards are stacked against a group via quotas, budget, infrastructure, discrimination, it will always be about race when one achieves something against the odds. Ken, before I get to you, I have to say something that there is affirmative action in this country, and yes, the Malay bourgeoisie does take advantage of affirmative action, but I don't like seeing all Malays getting tarred with the same brush as a result. And, the working class Malays also getting blamed as being equally a beneficiary of affirmative action as the Malay bourgeoisie. There is a university in Malaysia called UITM, which has quotas for Malay students. And basically, part of the reason why minorities are angry is because minority parents also pay taxes, and yet only Malays get to enter this university. It's not a very high-ranking university. I should say the majority of students have to be Malay. There's like a quota for Malay students. So they say it's, of course, we understand that this affirmative action policy was done to safeguard the interests of the Malays because they were thrust from feudalism to capitalism straight away, and the post-colonial leaders like Tunku Abdul Rahman were worried that they could not keep up with the Chinese. right? Because the Chinese had much more experience under capitalism. But unfortunately, this affirmative action created a strata of Malay bourgeoisie who reproduced these class privileges by taking advantage of this affirmative action and leading everybody else to believe that all Malays are privileged or all Malays are rich and have such good upward mobility, even though many Malays are still struggling to put food on the table. Um, Now the thing is, what I wanted to say, don't worry, I'll get to you. I'll let you speak in a minute. The fact is, we are angry, of course, that working class Chinese and Indian students find it really hard to get into public universities, and their places are taken by rich bourgeois Malays. But what I don't like is instead of blaming the bourgeois Malays, these liberals blame the Malays as a whole. And they
Mm.
basically say that, oh, it's because the Malays have like a cultural problem. They don't have the drive or the discipline of the Chinese to succeed academically. That's why they need a crutch to succeed. They need affirmative action, even though it's not the working class Malay that controls the policies in this country, right? So I'm sorry, I've talked a lot. It's your turn.
That's okay.
Go ahead. What do you think about
Uh,
this?
yes, so let me see. Education is very much about race in this country. Um, can't say I agree with that because we have the same thing in the US with the affirmative action. And it's not really about race, it's more about class, it seems like, because the person with the most money is the one that advantaged majority of the time of these programs. And meanwhile, the rest of are left behind. So this person seems to be very gatekeeping. He keeps this thing about like it would always be about race when one achieves something against that goes for everybody, not just the minorities. I'm sure there's a lot of poor Malays and other groups that also they're a part of the majority, but they also don't get a leg up. So I don't know
Hmm.
why he's
The the
it's
the
it's go ahead.
majority of the privileges go to the cabled Malays, of course. The ones with cables get the most privileges. I mean, the thing is though, is that these four Harvard kids, I just have to add, are not poor working class minorities struggling to get into a public university. These are upper middle class kids who went to private school. So my problem is how liberals are treating them as the revolutionary subject, the underprivileged minority who have beaten the odds and proven that minorities work harder than the average Malay. I mean, that's my problem, as you'll see with the tweets of LOL later on. But
Well,
yeah,
here's something I notice with people like Dizzy, right?
mm,
Do you notice that they zero in on an incident and then they blow it up
yeah,
to select? For example, the previous quote, the previous tweet you showed, he mentioned about the shoes and socks or whatever about
mm,
the bombing.
yeah,
So if I read this, if I didn't know anything about Malaysia or anything, I would think he's talking about all Malays
yeah.
or
But he said he
because
wasn't talking about all Malays. He said, unless you mean that all Malays are extremists. That's what he said to me.
but if I read this, for example, if someone who doesn't know Malaysia, doesn't know anything about Malaysia, right, just
Mm,
happens to be scrolling on X or Twitter and sees this post, he would think, oh, he must be talking about all Malays because it's a common thing that people from the West and liberals do is they like to compartmentalize everyone into a box. They like to zero in on a small fringe and then label every single person, right? So when he's talking about on the next tweet when he's talking about education and the minorities work hard and this and that. Okay, but that's just a small number of people who got lucky. I mean, I'm not putting down their hard work, or they work hard for it. But there's plenty of people who work very hard. There's probably very hardworking Malays or Malays who
Hmm.
made it, but they can't because, you know, when you have to work to survive, you can't put your best effort into it. Meanwhile, these kids, they have everything they need, so it's easier for them to
Hmm.
get the scholarship or get accepted into schools like these.
Exactly.
Whereas, you know, and it just seems like anything that local Malays do or Southeast Asians do in general, if it's like one incident, one little thing, they act like the whole country or the whole region, every single person and their mom and grandma is a Nazi, like it's a death camp. Meanwhile, if they go to the West, for example, America, Australia, etc., and you have people literally on the news openly saying they want to sit on Chinese skulls, they're beating people up, they're killing people, being a minority, for example. Oh, but that's different. We should only look at those small individuals and not everybody on the West is like this. But an incident in the East, everybody in the East is bad. So that's all I see from this.
What a double standard.
Yeah.
This is what he says to me. Let me keep it simple for you. My grandpa risked his life to fight against you shit-stirring, bloodthirsty commie scum. In fact, he even killed a handful of you in battle. He's talking about me. He was the one who was shit-stirring first, not me. He was the one who was trying to breed hatred against the Malays. What grandpa did, grandson will happily emulate if he sees the rise of red imperialists in this land again. Oh, another victim of communism. Ever notice the most eager socialists and commies are those that tried but did not and could not make it in life? You don't see successful people being this way. Only the B40s and M40s. Oh, he's referring to the Malays on welfare. They failed, so now they want intervention to make up for their failures.
Wait, so B40 and M40 is
Welfare
the
Malaysians.
welfare? Oh, okay.
So
Well,
he's
first,
another Thomas Sowell, you know.
yeah, so I want to zero in on that second tweet on the first paragraph where he says, "Ever notice that most eager socialists and commies are those that tried but did not and could not make it in life?" Yeah, is that's the point? If the capitalist class is taking all of the resources, what are the poor people supposed to do? Just starve?
Just sit there and do nothing, or
Sit there
just
and do
just take
nothing?
it and take it like a little bitch. No, of course not. But
And
that's
then
it.
they wag their finger, oh, you're lazy, you're a bum, you're this and you're that, and blah blah blah. Obviously, they're going to do something if they're going to turn to policies that benefit people just to have basic needs in life. And the thing is, they don't have the ability to put themselves in other people's shoes,
No, they
right?
don't.
Let's say, okay, for example, people who have wealth, many times, maybe it's just my opinion, people who have money and wealth think that because they have money and wealth, they never have to worry about knowing what it's like to be poor. But the thing is, as long as you live on this earth, anything can happen. There was a massive flood in southern China. There was a massive flood in Dubai. We had earthquakes here in Kazakhstan. We had also massive floods that washed all the way most of the western Kazakhstan, and many people lost their homes, their businesses, and they're poor, right? So what would he do if he was in the shoes of the working class Malays, for example, or the working class Indians and Chinese, or also are a minority, but also are struggling to get by? What would he do?
He probably doesn't think about them because he only wants to focus on the successful ones, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so for example, a lot of in the West, in America, for example, what a lot of certain groups of people, when
Mm.
they want to wag the finger at minorities or another group they disagree with, they use, for example, if they disagree with feminists, for example, right? They will pick a woman who is like, I don't know, kind of like red pill to wag the finger. If for example, African Americans, they have gripes about the racism or whatever it is that they're complaining about towards the US, they point to Thomas Sowell, they point to Candace Owens. They use these puppets to kind of like wag the finger on the group that they're trying to suppress. But they never look at the fact of their own group who are also suffering in in poverty, for example.
Hmm.
So this guy, I don't know. It's sometimes I think they are, how they accuse communists and socialists as like puppets or like what do they call them, Mao, and they call them Russian uh, spies. I think that's what these people are. They're actually projecting.
They're projecting. Well,
That's
this is
yeah.
what LOL, that annoying fellow who called you a colonialism. He says about Dizzy, he was referring to religious fundamentalism and not race. Possibly the one obsessed with race is you and not that rather than him. Also, since you identify as Peranakan, are you not descended from the colonialist class as well? Well, I mean, the Peranakan was considered the Queen's Chinese. I mean, the British liked them, so to speak, because they were not too Chinese or too Malay, so the British felt they were malleable. Um, so they were like the middlemen during colonial times. My grandmother was an English teacher. My grandfather was an officer under the colonial administration.
So the first tweet,
Administrator.
where he says that he's referring to religious fundamentalism. I don't know where on Dizzy's tweet that he uh, meant anything about fundamentalism.
No, he never said anything about Islam, that's for sure. He never said anything about fundamentalism. We can look at the tweet again. Is there anything about fundamentalism here? No, it's about flexing superiority complex, right? It's about flexing, right? Yeah.
Well,
So he's
well,
obviously, this is
no,
obviously
go ahead,
bullshit.
go ahead.
This is obviously bullshit. He was obviously talking about how minorities are simply better than the majority and they deserve more, apparently. Um, Yeah, I don't know. He says possibly the one obsessed with race is you rather than him. Yeah, I mean, even if my ancestors came from the colonialist class, they're not colonialists. Peranakans have been here since the 15th century. So,
But but let's say, even though it's yeah, what he says is not true, but let's just say that the Peranakan were a colonialist class, right?
hmm,
Okay, so thousands of years ago they were colonizing the Malays. What does that have to do with you today?
nothing.
Are
Even
you,
if my grandfather did have ties with the Western imperialists, I mean, you know, it is no bearing on me today. And,
yeah,
my
the thing is, just because your ancestors were something, whether colonialism, religious fundamentalists, slaves, whatever, it doesn't mean you must follow what your ancestors did, right?
hmm,
For example, for example, there's a diaspora war going on with the and African diaspora community. So the African Americans call themselves FBA or Foundational Black Americans. It just means people who were former slaves that who were a part of the American society when it became a thing. And these Americans, they fought in war. They're just as colonialist class, basically, different than the Anglo-Saxons or the whites, right? But just because they were slaves, does that mean I should still be a slave today? Just
oh,
because many of those, okay, so the freed slaves, just because they were colonialists, they went to Liberia, they willingly fought in wars, and murdered other poor people. Does that mean I have to follow what they do too? No, absolutely not. So just because your ancestors were something, it doesn't mean you also have to follow what they do. So
Exactly.
I don't know why, what that has to do with anything.
Hmm. Well, he says we're biased. He says, remember we talked about how America is actually less civilized than Malaysia. Malaysia is more civilized than America. It's still more orderly and more respectful than America. This interview is so biased. The US isn't the same everywhere. It's only the urban centers that are rife with crime and homelessness. Okay, so what?
Well, this person's never been in the US because the average American person would tell you that's nonsense. No, the amount of crime and violence we have in our society, mass shootings, every year the mass shootings increases. Mass shootings in schools, children are getting shot. Innocent people in the library and malls and movie theaters, they're getting killed for no reason. Homelessness, drugs, actual hate crimes because of your race, because of your how do you call this? Your sexual orientation. All of these things happen every day. You can go on the news, you will see it. It's right there. Articles, books, quotes. You quote any president or any political person, and it's right in front of your face. You don't see. We don't have. There are no the issues we have in the U.S. Most of them, almost all of the things that we have, is not present in Malaysia. And notice how defensive he is. He says the US isn't the same everywhere, only the urban center. So because I expose the bad in America, these people get defensive. But if I said, oh, America is great, Malaysia's trash, it's garbage.
Then
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
they would be
Yes, it's
nodding their head in
exactly.
agreement. Yeah.
Yeah, he would be nodding. Because it's not just this guy. A lot of liberals do this. Here in Kazakhstan, they're like this. In Russia, Ukraine, because they look to the West as the ultimate pinnacle of civilization, like a religion. And because you don't agree that the West, wherever it is the way to be, and the foreigners who are coming to Malaysia, they're coming to Thailand, to Indonesia, or whatever, and they're saying, "Wow, this is so much better than where I come from." They take it as a personal attack,
Yeah.
like you just
Like you know you're not agreeing with their narrative and you that means you are anti them.
yeah. And I want to say this on screen on this video, right? This is just my opinion. Lots of people are going to hate me. I don't care. I think these particular groups of people who do this should be arrested and questioned. Why? Because these people, it's like they're trying to incite hatred, bring hatred to the country of Malaysia. They're slandering the country of things that's not true or wildly exaggerated, right? Or, for example, I saw some tweets and you showed me one tweet where the guy said, wow, Malaysia is one of the most beautiful countries and the people were wonderful. In every other comment, someone had to negate what this person said. So, and then when you ask them, they'll say like, oh, the minorities, we're suffering so much, we're horribly discriminated against, blah, 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 blah. So if you're an outsider, you don't know anything about Malaysia, and you read these people, read their tweets, or you read articles, you watch their news, and you see these people because they're the first ones that come up. Because people with money, they have more influence. It's like you're inciting hatred, you're dehumanizing the people of that country. So it's like they're trying to stir up some kind of riots between. They're trying to rip apart
Hmm.
the
The
society.
foundations of the society.
Yeah. So
The
the way
seed.
I see it,
Yeah.
yeah, the way I see it, it's like, for example, you showed me about Lee Kuan Yew and why Singapore was separated from Malaysia.
Hmm.
I can say, you know what, they're trying to make more Singapores. They're trying to tear each and every state apart because They want Malaysia to be after their ideal, like Singapore, which they're really bitter that it's not. So they keep inciting lies and fake stuff. Because every time when you ask them, okay, for example, if I say, in America, minorities, they're being oppressed, we're being beaten, we're being this, we're being that. I can show you, I can pull up all sorts of stuff, news, articles, books, etc. Right? Quotes, presidents that said X, Y, Z. But when you ask them, okay, you're saying Malaysia's that bad? Oh, really? They treat you that bad? Is it like us? Do you get treated the way we get treated? Please show me. I'll be happy to support you if it's true. When you ask them for proof, nothing. Either nothing, or they give you some half answer or some answer or some nonsense.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Now I'm gonna get back to share screen. They're really they don't have the backing, or they don't have a way to they don't have a leg to stand on, shall we say. They're just trying to incite a riot so that they can appear like the victims, and then yeah, they're hoping that something comes out of this riot. Well, this is what this guy says. I mean, is he means Comrade Rice talking about you? Is he aware that of the fact that you're actually a counter-revolutionary? This is the biggest joke. This guy isn't even a socialist. He's a liberal, and he's a Thomas Sowell fan. I think that's the biggest issue here. You shouldn't be preaching stuff like that if you can't live up to it. Uh, and if it's a joke, you should put a disclaimer to avoid dragging others into it. There are people who take things like this seriously, like the American youth. Also, aren't you afraid of getting called up for a chat with the high-ups? How am I a counter-revolutionary? I'm literally a member of the Socialist Party of Malaysia, you clown. So that's what I said to him. So that's what do you make of this?
So let me see. There are people who take. So he says the American youth, I'm sorry, it's just an opinion that I have, but most overwhelming majority of American people are so reactionary, you can't change them at all. So I think he has it twisted and backwards. Either he doesn't know the terms, what they mean, and he's just throwing out terms to try to shame you, or he knows what he's talking about and he's just trying to confuse you entirely. Because he said, for example, I was deleting comments, but I didn't delete any comments.
Exactly.
Either YouTube is doing that, or he doesn't know how to use the computer, or he's just making stuff up just to get my reaction. And he said, I'm a colonialist and a reactionary because I only said good things about Malaysia.
Oh, I can show that part. I'll just get back to it in just a
So
minute. I'll show that part is this part here. Stop deleting my comments calling you out for being a colonizer and a reactionary. You see it?
yes, so I don't know. Well, first I didn't delete anything. I don't delete the comment. But last time I checked, a colonizer is when someone comes into your land, take the resources at the expense of the blood of the people, not support them and bring them up and trying to bring people together. So where does he get this idea that where in the video in our interview did we say, yeah,
We
to
want the
hell with these?
Malaysian people to be fighting against each other. Oh, haha, we want to take over the resources. When did we ever say that? We never said that.
We all I said was, well, the whole point of the interview was Malaysia's great. I don't know what these certain groups of people are talking about, how it's so bad. I showed examples of crime and things that happen in the US compared to Malaysia, which doesn't exist in Malaysia because you have gangs and murderers and drug lords and all these things that doesn't exist in Malaysia. And I'm saying Malaysia is a wonderful place. I'm a reactionary and a colonialist for that.
Doesn't know what he's talking about.
I was actually going to make a poll and post it on Twitter
Hmm.
for here. Does this make me a reactionary? Just to see what the results are. Now let's now remember what I said earlier. Remember what I said earlier. To show that what they're saying is nonsense, is just take their words and just change the variable, change the nouns. And then if they negatively react, it just shows that it's nonsense because they're contradicting their own words. If I said Malaysia is trash, Malaysia has a lot of criminals and all this other bad stuff, but in America, for example, we have whatever freedom, whatever it is. He wouldn't be saying that. He would be supporting it, right? But because I bring up Malaysia or another country that doesn't align with Western values, oh, now I'm a colonialist and a reactionary because I don't agree with what the West. Anybody who disagrees or don't put the West, who doesn't lick the boots of the West, is a reactionary. And what I think is he doesn't think that. He's just trying to shame people for not licking the boots of the West. It's basically the new N-word. Who are you to not know your place? Colonialist, anti-Semites, you xenophobe, you homophobe, you this, you that. Even though we're the farthest thing from any of those things, they just call us that to shut us up. So I think that's what he's doing.
Absolutely. And you know, these people are just throwing, you know, baseless labels at us in order to slander us. Now, we only have 1 more minute, so let's would you like to say anything about this very quickly, this tweet here? It comes across though that he's saying about me that you are bending over backwards to pander to those in power. That means because I attacked Dizzy, because Dizzy was being racist against Malays by stamping out criticism of the government. No, he wasn't criticizing the government. He was attacking the Malays. And somewhat self-hating of others of your own race. That's the general vibe you give off. Well, let's see
Goodness.
what.
Self-hating this, self-hating that. If you're an Afro person and you don't agree with Afro-Nazism, you're self-hating. If you're a Malaysian person who supports Malaysia, you're self-hating. Everything is self-hating to them. It's just another N-word to these people. So definitely don't take him serious. If anything, he's a self-hating person because if someone is bringing up your country and you're putting it down, then you're the self-hating one naturally, right?
That's an excellent point, my friend. Do you want to do another half, or it's he is a self-hater because
We can do 20 minutes, yes. I'll send the link. I'll send the link.
okay. Oh, and okay, we're back. Yeah, so he's the self-hating one, not me, but he's just trying to gaslight me, right?
Oh, yeah. Let me finish. I wanted to continue before we got disconnected. So yeah, people who yeah, so like I was saying, if someone comes to your country and they're saying, wow, this is a great country. You guys have great food, great, interesting history, wonderful people, beautiful nature, blah, 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 right? And these are foreigners. These are Western people, Koreans, Japanese, people who have high standards in life are saying Malaysia fits fits their standards, right? And they're saying great things. But then you as a person, as a citizen of that country, whether you're minority, majority, or whatever, are attacking those people, gaslighting those people, and saying nothing but negative things, you're the self-hating one, not the person, not the next Malaysian, not your fellow Malaysian person who's trying to support his or own country. Just like you told me about what is it, cricket? You said
Cricket?
or badminton?
Oh, badminton.
Badminton.
Yeah.
You said
If let's
that
say a
there's
badminton match were to go on between China and Malaysia or Singapore and Malaysia, some of these people like LOL would be cheering for Singapore or China. And also, let's say, you know how they talk about Singapore's history? They say, "Oh, the best thing that happened to Singapore was separating from Malaysia. We dumped them, but look at them now. Wow, first world country. Look at us." That is terrible because they live in this country, they have a citizenship in this country, and they are living off the medical care. They're benefiting from the public infrastructure, except UITM, except for the educational infrastructure. But they're basically they have they are basically citizens of this country, but they talk as if they were already citizens of Singapore. So I don't want to call them traitors because I don't want to sound like a fascist. What am I supposed to say?
Well, I'll say this: there's a lot of people like him here in Kazakhstan that
Hmm.
hate Kazakhstan, and
Hmm.
they're from Kazakhstan. They're born, raised here. They're ethnically Kazakh, speak Kazakh, culturally Kazakh, and they will cheer for anywhere else but Kazakhstan.
Hmm.
Now, I think maybe they feel that way because the culture is harsh on them because these are steppe people. They have nomadic traditions, and during those times, it was a really harsh way of life. But when I get to talk to them, they live great. They live better than Americans do. They have mom and dad at home, which a lot of Americans don't have. Their parents work a decent job. They have decent money. They have a decent job, or they have good education. They travel the world multiple times a day. I'm sorry, multiple times a year. And there's nothing about their life that they're really suffering from, but they're going to say that it's like Kazakhstan is the worst country on the planet. Anywhere else is North Korea and Turkmenistan is better than Kazakhstan to these people. I think that's just these people. They're just really, really spoiled and ungrateful with what
Spoiled.
they have.
That's
Because
the word.
lots of American people, not just American, people from first world countries, global northern countries, would be happy to trade citizenships with these people who are from Malaysia. They would be more than happy to. And in fact, I bet you if these people, if for example, you meet these people like Dizzy, LOL, and all these other guys, and I say to them, "Oh, it's that bad? Okay, let's change passports. Here's my passport. I'll take your passport. Bye." Watch how freaking they'll start freaking out and saying, "Oh no, no, actually, this is my homeland," and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, they'll say,
They
"This
change
is
it
my
to
homeland. I'm not going anywhere. It's my right to stay here." That's what they'll say. Yeah. I was born
oh
in this
yeah,
country.
yeah. But on the same breath, they say that they'll say like, they were born in this country, but then they'll come at me and say, "Oh, you have no idea how good you have it. You're from America. You're from the UK. You're from Japan, Korea, and you don't know about it." Without having how you call it, they don't have
Awareness.
self-awareness of what they're saying.
They don't have self-awareness. I shall say that they're so narcissistic. They don't seem to understand how good they have it. I
They have
mean,
it so good.
I'm
Yeah.
sure they live better than an average Malay as well. A white collar liberal is probably living better than average working class Malay. Let me put it that way.
I can even say a lot of them live better than the average middle class American,
Really?
for a fact, yeah.
Hmm.
Because the average, well, I can't say about how their life in Malaysia is in terms of like their income, but in America, every year people are living check to check because we have a lot of homeless people. There's a lot of homeless people in jails and people who have problems that you wouldn't have in Malaysia. For example, just from the fact that in Asian culture, you can live with your parents.
Hmm.
In America, for example, and Anglo countries, it's like a huge taboo to live with your parents. Just by asking, "Can I stay with you for a couple months?" That's like a sin. That's like
Hmm.
the worst thing you can do. And certain things that's culturally acceptable in Malaysia, it's impossible to do in America. So they have to turn to drugs or drug dealing or working in the adult industry, for example, or turning to crime or being homeless. So just from that fact alone, people in Malaysia, well, I'm talking about the liberals, have it far better than people in America.
They still get to bank on Asian culture when it suits them because many of them still live with their parents. I'm not shaming them for living with their parents. I do
Yeah, yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But they hate Malaysia, but at the same time, they still want to bank on the parts of Asian culture that suits them. Um it's like they don't know how good they have it over here, really. It's just they're angry about the affirmative action. I can understand why, but if you're angry about race-based politics, why not make a difference by fighting for socialism? Because once we enter the socialist mode of production, race-based politics naturally wither away, right? But they don't want that. You see, how about we unite all the Malaysian workers? We try not to antagonize the Malaysian working class, and we see each other as a class first, and then after that, race-based politics will naturally wither away when we no longer see race. Then they're like, they get the knee-jerk reaction. Some more privileged, they're the minorities. There are Malays who are fighting for equality. But at the same time, there are also Malays who are struggling to put food on the table, right? So they think Malays are all drowning in money and they're all super privileged, and Chinese and Indians, they're like the blacks in Jim Crow America.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's one more thing I want to say. Malaysia is very safe. And when I mean
Mm.
safe, look at USSR, Kazakhstan, Russia, these countries are multi-ethnic and you can say multicultural in a way, right? During World War II, everybody had like one identity, not only just because that was the culture of USSR, it didn't matter your race, but you had Nazi Germany that wanted to exterminate everybody. So if you don't want to be exterminated, you had better got along with your fellow citizens of different race or nationality, because if you lose and you fail because your vision won't exist. And Malaysia doesn't have this kind of
Threat.
threat of existence, right? Like,
Yeah.
for example, let's say Indonesia became super fascist. They want to eradicate Malaysia and take Malaysia as their own, for example. I think if that, nah, maybe not. I was going to say if that happened, then maybe they would jump on board, but they would probably just be fun and say, see, you see, they're all radicals. They're all radicals. So that, but yeah, they're just, for example, you ever seen maybe some American TV show or like on the news where you have an extremely spoiled child, extremely spoiled brat. Their parents are so soft, they don't discipline them. So the child screams and has tantrums and I want ice cream. I want ice cream. My parents are abusing me because they don't want to give me ice cream. So imagine that person grew up without discipline and they become what you see today with the liberals.
The liberals. Because,
So
working
that's,
class people don't talk like that. It's only the white collar liberals who really talk like that.
yes.
I guess they are spoiled. They hate this country. That's the thing. It's affirmative action is just the rationale they use for hating it. Even if there were no affirmative action, let's just say Malaysia was like it had no affirmative action, they would find something else to dislike about it, right?
Yeah. Or let's say they took away affirmative action, right? And let's say Malaysians in Malaysia or Malays said, you know what? Let's be like Singapore. And they all start working extremely hard, right?
Hmm.
So the competition in the workforce is going to be so cutthroat that these minorities that are complaining, the liberal ones, not the working class ones, the liberal ones, the white collar ones, then they're going to start crying about it. Whoa, 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 whoa! You don't have to work so. because now they actually have to work harder and keep hard.
Yeah.
So
I,
rather than just be happy and say like, oh, I have my wealth and resources because these lazy Malays. I'm not saying they're lazy. That's what they
I know what
say,
you mean, yeah.
right? Because of these lazy people, I get to be more. I have an unfair advantage. I have the education, I have the money, and I have all the connections that they don't have. But if the working class of all races decided we're going to be like Malaysia or Korea or Japan or USA, and life becomes super toxic, now they're all going to start crying about it. Oh, it's so difficult to live, and the competition is too fierce, and blah blah blah. They're only saying this now because they can do it now because they have no competition. They have monopoly, basically. So if they get away with if there was a way that if you can get them to realize how lucky they got it, I don't think they're ever going to.
Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate. I think the reason why they haven't moved to Singapore is, you know why? Because they enjoy flexing their superiority over here. They
Yeah,
feel that, if I move to Singapore, I'll have to work harder, and I won't be seen as anything special. But over here, I can feel special. I can feel like superior. That's why I'm not moving to Singapore, even though I think I'm better than most Malaysians. That's why they don't seem to really love being Malaysian, but they still want to live here.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I agree. So, and then one last thing before we go, I want to bring up this low LOL guy is
Yeah.
wrong too when he said that the interview was biased because this only happens in large cities. So he just smacked the face of all the victims in USA that don't live in cities where crime happens. So all the Asian Americans who actually suffered, who actually were victims of violent racial attack and actual fundamentalism, he just smacked all their faces because he's just saying they don't exist, which
He
there
just
are in large numbers.
dismissed them. Dismissed them.
Yeah,
And
because again, it's not difficult to find proof, to find receipts. I can pull up anything about any non-large cities, all the crimes and things that happens, and then he's going to make up something else.
no, these people, like you said, if let's say they experience racism in the West, and a white guy could say the nastiest, vilest shit about Asian people, they'll say, "Oh, we should not judge an entire race by individuals." But then if Southeast Asian, like you said, if a Malay says something they don't like, it says something racist or something, one action, it basically taints every single member of the race. You know what?
Yeah.
Like you were saying. So it's like these people are never gonna be happy over here. Like you say, they no matter what, no matter how the country goes, they'll never be happy. Because they're fundamentally ingrates. They're just not happy to be here because they
Mhm.
feel that they're above the Malaysian masses. It's not
Mhm.
because they feel the Malays are bullying them. That's what they say. But in actual fact, they feel that they are above, superior to the Malaysian masses. They have
So they're
contempt.
victims and superiors at the same time.
Yeah, you know who that sounds like, right? Starts with
Yes,
a Z, Z
yeah.
ends with a
Starts
T.
with a Z.
Zai,
Yeah.
Zai, Zio, Zio, Zionist. Okay, my friend. I think we're gonna wrap it up here. Have you anything else to add?
Yeah. No, that's it. Oh, next video, next collaboration, we need to make a video about Thomas Sowell is wrong about Malaysia.
Yeah, we should. We should. We're gonna find some quotes of that.
Now I can say something. Uh-huh.
Okay, awesome. We'll talk about Thomas Sowell, that old fox who hasn't met his maker yet, but he should. Okay. Well, my friend, I shall end this video now. Then next video,
Okay.
we're gonna get Thomas Sowell. Okay. Goodbye. Have a good
All
night.
right, goodbye. Have
Bye-bye.
a good night.